Welcome to Third Culture Leaders, where we dive deep into a world of those who grew up in between cultures. I'm your host, Murali Srinarayanas, and together we'll explore the unique perspectives of those who grew up in a culture that's different from their parents. While this can be isolating, it also gives us the ability to create deep relationships and gain and embrace a global perspective. This podcast is a platform to share the stories of third culture leaders who have brought a global perspective to Canada. Let's reflect on those insights and take action. I wanted to invite my friend Roy Ratnavel to the podcast.
There are some troubling signs of where this country is heading for me personally.
Roy is a surviving political prisoner and came to Canada and then rose to the highest levels in the financial industry.
Nobody does business with you. They have to first like you. And once they like you, they'll do business with you. Or they may not, but they have to like you first.
Incredible story. It's a story of resilience. He went through mental health challenges, PTSD, but he still was able to reach to these levels of success.
If you ask for sympathy from people, you'll definitely get it. But sympathy never solves an issue.
Some of these insights are shared in the podcast, and I really hope you'll enjoy it. Roy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I really want to start off with a moment in your life that has made you who you are today. If you could pick one moment, I know that can be challenging, but what would that choice be for you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And that's an interesting question because I live to be about 55 years now, so there's a lot of things happening in life. But I would say one particular moment was, as you know, I was a political prisoner at the age of 17. And I was there for a few months and I was tortured numerous occasions. And one time I was sitting there among the other broken souls in the prison. My right bicep was bleeding profusely from the torture. And I made a crude bandage to stop the bleeding as the blood was dripping through. I remember my father saying that we don't choose the times we live in, and it's how we respond to the situation that is presented to us. And I think that was really the turning point for me in life at the age of 17, thinking that, in life sometimes these things happen, and it's not like I don't wish that on anybody else. These things do happen, but the fact is that life is unfair, and sometimes you have to figure out a way to get out of that and move forward. And that's sort of what propelled me throughout life in the sense that I would say that's probably the turning point in my life.
That's incredible. And I mean, right off the start of the podcast, so many deep things that you shared.
Well, I don't want to disturb you out of the gate, but you asked the question.
Yes, I love it. But really sets the context for who you are. And, I have so many questions about that time. But your father has been a great influence in your life. You speak about him often. Mm-hmm. And, you've met my father.
You do the same thing. We have something in common.
Yes, absolutely. I think
we have many things in common, but this jumps out for me, yeah.
Yes, I think, our parents have such a great influence on us as well. And really your father was gave you a lot of good advice. I mean, something that you shared just now in terms of the prison, but also as you came to Canada. Can you share a little bit about that journey on how you came to Canada, what that was like, and some of the things people like your father and perhaps others shared with you?
Yeah, look, it's, we all in life look up to somebody who, whether they're with us or not, they inspire you to do the right things in life. And I wouldn't say that I've done all the things right in life. And I think, on balance, I did more things right than wrong. And one of the things my father taught me from earlier on is that self-responsibility. I think we, as humans, are free to do whatever we want, but we have to own the consequences of our actions. And that's exactly what it is for me all my life. And that, he used to say to me, I remember this when I was maybe 7, 8 years old, crying about something. And he said, look, kid, there are two types of problems in the world, yours and everybody else's. Nobody will fix yours. And that really a tough lesson for a 7-year-old, but it really kind of tattooed that in my brain. Because at the end of the day, your issues are yours. And another thing he used to say is that if you ask for sympathy from people, you'll definitely get it. But sympathy never solved an issue. So those things have made a profound impact in how I looked at things in life. And that's not to be cold or not to be empathetic towards other people's issue, but the reality is you are the CEO of your own corporation, the individual. And at the end of the day, people will say, I'm here for you, right? That's sort of a natural thing for people to say. It's a nice thing to say. So when my father died, 35 years ago, people say what they usually say. Just give us a call if you need anything. And 35 years later, I don't even know where these people are. So I think that sort of became the bedrock of my philosophy in life. And then coming here and meeting some incredible people, not too far from here, by the way, Richmond and Bays, when I started my career.
Right, at CI.
CI, just at the Simpson Tower. Now it's called the Bay, I guess. And 401 Bay Street. And I met a lot of incredible people. But one thing I learned is that it is really about a few things. One, you have to differentiate yourself. You have to communicate better. And you have to appreciate. So differentiate, communicate, appreciate. So the reason I say that is everybody's trying to excel in life. Let's say the profession I was in on Bay Street, they all kind of dress the same, say the same thing. Why am I different? So you have to differentiate yourself. That's the first thing that I learned from my father as well. And the second he used to say is that communicate well. The communication skills, like laws of physics, it applies everywhere. If you had a good idea, if you don't know how to communicate the idea to the vast audience, then you have no idea. So I had to learn how to communicate better. And I was a terrible communicator. I'm not sure I'm the best at it now, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. The third thing is probably one of the most important things is appreciation for life and appreciation for people. And I think I have never met an individual, a successful, happy individual who isn't appreciative of things. So having that attitude of gratitude, not to sound cliche-ish, but it is important because nobody makes it in this world alone. You need support. Your family, whether it's father, spouse, friends, sometimes the country. And so I think all those three support have been tremendous for me in my career. And so having that appreciation is important.
Take us through that moment where you're on the plane and, your first moment landing in Canada. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's because I never left Sri Lanka and I never left my parents. And I was 18 actually, sorry. I was shoved into this plane as I was taking over, leaving this troubled land that I was born in. But just to think of the fact that now I have to go and learn a new language. Not that I didn't speak English, but not as fluently as I do now, but a new culture, a new way of thinking, living, and it's terrifying for a kid. But when I landed, I still remember this. I was coming through so Pearson International Airport was when I landed on April 19th, 1988, so about 35 plus years ago. And as I was coming out of the airport, getting into the building, and I see this immigration customs area, and I see these burly dudes in uniforms, handling the crowd. And for a kid like me who came from a country where people in uniform routinely abused my people, the Tamils, I reflexively started panicking. Understandably, just to see men in uniform, and because to me that always gave me shiver through my spine to see people in uniform, and because those are the people who tortured me. And so, as I was walking through this, and I see these two burly guys walking towards me in the hallway, and my heart was pounding. They just merely looked at me and said, "Good evening," and smiled as they walked by. And precisely at that moment, I wanted to become a Canadian. I just didn't think it was possible to see how people in authority treat other people with respect and kindness. So that to me is sort of spoke to me about what this nation is all about.
It's nice that the sirens are going off there.
Hopefully it's not for us.
I was in a movie called This Place, where as part of my role, I had to. Part of the story is that there's an individual that coming from Sri Lanka. It's
Right.
one of the main characters' fathers, and then another. The other character's father and his brothers come, and I think they're landing in Montreal or something.
All right.
And, I came as a kid. I came with my parents, so I think they were more nervous about the situation. I was probably just excited for the flight to get here.
Right.
But it was that moment, especially for us as Tamils, and in this case, also an Iranian family, coming from a very traumatic experience and not knowing, as you said,
Right.
seeing these men in uniform and not knowing how to react to that and what it would be like. In the film, they actually run out of the customs wasn't as serious as it is today, so they actually kind of simply walk out of the airport. But I think that's an incredible experience that you shared, and I think really connects to a lot of people as they come into Canada,
Right.
not knowing what to expect. We had Adrienne Clarkson on the podcast, and she has this wonderful organization, the ICC, that does these citizenship ceremonies. And they used to have them actually in police stations or these kinds of environments where it was like a government authority.
Interesting choice.
Interesting choice, exactly. And so the ICC does these events in libraries and more welcoming institutions that can really give a nicer picture to what Canada has to offer. How has immigrants changed from when you came in 1988 to what you're seeing now? Maybe I should reference it's 2024, I think, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big loaded question, more like a policy question in a sense. But I'll give you my take on this, okay? And I say this by a disclaimer that it's my opinion, so therefore I could be wrong. I learned this from my life, being married for almost 25 years. First of all, Canada as a nation is a nation of immigrants. We all know that. And this is why it's an interesting nation to be in. I mean, I could have gone to Australia or any other Western nation. My dad chose that Canada should be the land of opportunity, and how right he was in his assessment. So now looking back 35 years later of my journey in this country and being a nice one at that, I mean, I have benefited immensely from this society in this country. Just looking back, there are some troubling signs of where this country is heading for me personally. And not necessarily just immigration issue per se. I think immigration is an important aspect of this country. I think we need to continue to get skilled people to come to this country. Also people on a compassionate base as well. I mean, I am a recipient of Canadians' compassion. I have nothing to add to this land. I was an 18-year-old with no skill except for the age. And so there are two types of immigration, political and economic based. And I think what I see now is that there's no, at least based on my view, is that what connects us as Canadian as one thread isn't there like it used to be. And we tend to sort of live in small groups under a big tent. And what I mean by that is it's whether it was by bucketed into religious groups or racial minorities or whatever you want to call it. I think we have to find a way to break the walls down and to engage people across different culture, different religion, different belief system to create a mosaic of a nation that can be strong and still be able to celebrate the differences, but also come together as one group of people. And I benefited greatly by having the experience of living out west for most part of my life. I came here and then I left 10 years later to British Columbia, and I traveled through extensively to small parts of British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan and the prairies, gave me a bird's eye view into Canada. And I think that part is missing for many. Canada has become so regionally divided, west and the east, and so I don't know how to fix this, but all I can say is I think that people who we elect, we need to make sure that they're not dividing us, they're uniting us. And it is so, we are better off, instead of paying attention to the past division, to pay attention to the present bonds. And I learned this from being in prison. One of the reasons I'm alive today is because of a person from the other side of the ethnic group who helped me to get out of the prison. And that taught me in a very profound way that once you break down the walls, at the core of it, we are all the same. We have the same fears, same wants, same issues. And my travel through Western Canada and also Eastern Canada has taught me that, to be able to really see the differences and appreciate that. I know we talk about diversity as our strength, which is sort of a cliche retail politician sort of thing to say to get claps, but they don't really mean it. Diversity isn't our strength. Diversity of thought is our strength. I think we need to have people with different opinions, different ideas, to be able to contribute to this great nation to move forward. And I think, we are falling behind in terms of, and you're closer to this than I am, falling behind in competitiveness, attracting capital, attracting skilled people. I know you and I were at an event and they were talking about how people are leaving. That never happened before. And I think we need to find ways to show Canada as a destination of choice for people. And I know you're working through that, and I admire that, and I think a lot of people should do that. And I'm doing my part in a small way to try to make that happen.
I love that notion of what you said, diversity of thought.
Yeah.
And, politicians, or I would just say leaders in general,
right,
getting away from this divisive kind of rhetoric and bringing us together, recognizing that we're different, but really focusing on the connections that we have.
Right.
What are your thoughts on, and I know you're going to give me a very open and honest answer, so I don't even need to preface it by that, but what are your thoughts on this term, third culture kid?
Right.
How does it land with you? How do you see it as it relates to Canada?
So I didn't know about this third culture kid definition until you brought it up to me a few days ago, and I looked it up. And so I don't really fit into that because I haven't really lived in different parts of the world like you have to have that kind of diverse experience of different nations and bringing that back here. I did a slingshot right from Sri Lanka to here and had no insight on anything. So I don't really belong there. I'm just an immigrant who came here, a political refugee, if you want to call it. Actually, an immigrant. I have met people who are third culture kid. In fact, my wife is one of those. Right? She lived in different parts of the world and ended up in Canada. I think that people like yourself 1,000 times can really do a lot of help to this nation because you bring a different perspective in living in a different nation. And
can I put this on my political campaign video?
Well, you got to give me royalty payments for that.
I think not to cut you off, Roy, but just to give a clarifying point. You have definitely third culture insights because, growing up from one country and then really in your development years, you were 18 years old, but really still a lot of development to go through in a totally different culture. And then not entirely fitting back into your home country, not entirely fitting into this new culture is that third culture kind of definition and perspective. And I think the way that, and I see this now, we're in a few similar circles, especially in the Tamil community and entrepreneurship, et cetera, how you are able to navigate those different worlds. I think some people with this third culture thinking do it well. Some people don't do it well. I definitely identify you as someone who has done it well. And maybe I think a very strong example for me is how, this Bay Street, your financial sector, and the heights that you've reached come and still connecting with your roots, I think is incredible.
I think maybe the third culture experience came from really traveling in different parts of Canada.
Right.
Like I think if you think of Canada as a country, within the country there are different countries, right? Every region is different. If you go to New Brunswick, very different set of people. The way they're all beautiful people and different in their own ways. And but living out west probably gave me the best experience I ever had. So if anyone who's listening to this podcast, I highly recommend you go out west and spend some time, because it's an incredible part of the country that is not well explored by a lot of people. First of all, it's beautiful. And just beautiful people. If you like pierogies, you grew up in Winnipeg, so you should know this. And it's a frontier mentality, which I love, because it's about risk-taking, right? And I find Westerners to be, and no knock on the eastern part of the country, don't tweet me, there is something about that part of the land that really inspired me more than any other place that I've been to. And how warm people were. And it gave me so much perspective. And also, I would say that, we are in almost like the capital of Canada, Toronto. It's financial hub and everything happens. The largest contributor to the GDP, biggest population, all that. But there is a difference between urban and rural business strategy, business model. And I think many companies miss that too. Many people miss that because the thinking is different. And so even when I was part of my previous organization, I was dead set on having two different strategies for the business, what I would call rural and urban. Because people have, the business is done very differently out west let's not say out west, rurally, because it could be small part Ontario too. It's that part is what actually gave me the understanding of the colorfulness of this nation in terms of how to navigate through different communities and cultures and be able to fit in.
Was there anything from your childhood in terms of how you grew up that helped you in rural parts of Western Canada?
I think it's, again, I have to go back to my father because he's endlessly curious about other people, right? And almost like a people watcher. I think you can learn from watching other people. And he would often tell me, look at this guy, he's just here's what he's going to say or whatever. He's an incredibly intuitive person about humans and how they behave in certain circumstances. And so that sort of gave me the innate ability to really find the common ground in people. And I've been in business long enough to know that nobody does business with you. They have to first like you. And once they like you, they'll do business with you. Or they may not, but they have to like you first. And so we often, go in with these PowerPoints and lingos and strategies. And at the end of the day, there are other people who can do the same thing. It's about differentiation. Why are you different, right? So if you go to certain parts of Canada, they want to talk about family. They want to talk about their holidays. They want to talk about their grandkids. They want to talk about the new dog they got, whatever that might be that connects them. And then in Ontario, in Toronto, it might be different. It could be about someone's cottage they bought. I don't know what it is, though. I always said that you're better off being 5 inch deep and 50 miles wide in your knowledge than 5 inch wide and 50 miles deep, because then you don't resonate with the mass audience, right? So you have to know. I had this habit of waking up early in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. I usually get up when I was working. Now maybe not that late early, and before I go to the gym, I do three things. I look at what happened overnight markets, which is what pays my bill. Second, what happened politically overnight, and what happened in sports, right? The general news, sports, entertainment, because people live in sound bites, and you need to be able to connect with people. And I think finding that connection has helped me. And I'm not sure if it came from some of it from my dad, some of it from my lived experience, but most of it came from really meeting people of all kinds of different backgrounds. I mean, I used to do 80 meetings a month. 80 meetings a month. Yeah. So I would do about 20 a week, and I'll meet 20 different people. And then each of them will be with different backgrounds, but they might be all similar in some cases, but not so much in other cases. And sort of the world was brought to me by meeting these people from, someone could be from Iran or Iraq, or someone from Germany, and it just, or someone from here but has a background in Irish or whatever. So you learn to have their food and have their drinks and have their jokes, and it is actually a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. It's at the end of the day, we're a nation of people.
Yeah.
It comes back to connections with people.
Right.
One of my favorite, it's not a tagline.
I know what you're going to say.
I love this. Do you want to say it, or should I?
No, you say it.
Should I say it? Accidental Sri Lankan, unapologetic Tamil, and proud Canadian.
Right.
I love this line, trademark pending.
Yes. I got to find the right lawyer for this.
What does this mean to you? Please.
So
share.
I'll expand this. I know you had the short form, which I like, but I used to say, I still say, I'm an accidental Sri Lankan by birth, an unapologetic Tamil by heritage, a proud Canadian by choice. You can be all three. And I say accidental Sri Lankan by birth intentionally because I have zero love for that land that I was born in, and I make no bones about it. And tweet me about that. We can discuss. Why would I ever love a land that tried to kill me or kill my father eventually? I have zero connection to it. I mean, I do care about the people who I left behind. I do what I can to help them out. But other than that, I couldn't care less. What I do care is about my heritage. I'm proud of it, and everybody should be proud of their own heritage. And that should be a good thing to do. And I'm very proud of my heritage, and I'm unapologetic about it. And then on the third part is the proud Canadian by choice. I chose to come here, and I chose to live here. And no matter what it is, I'm going to be staying here. And I have this, I've said this before, that everyone, including myself, should leave this place better than we have found it. I think that should be our motto. And because in the final analysis, it's not the accolades you take with you, it's the impact you leave behind. And so I would say to anyone who is listening, a Canadian, in a small way, doesn't have to be big things, small things. And if you give someone who is new to this land just an idea or an opportunity to work in some places, or make the connection for somebody, open the door for them, or whatever that you can do. These are important things. I think people build country, not politicians. And so that's sort of why I say those things.
I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Roy, you have a son who I've met
in Malaysia, right?
In Malaysia, no, at your book launch.
Oh, right.
Was
Okay.
the first time, and very nice young man.
Like the mother.
I have a son, Leonardo, and they have International Day at his school, and my kids are half Tamil, a quarter Ukrainian, a quarter Russian, and they asked him. I was there. The teacher was asking him. My daughter picked. She wants to dress in a Tamil attire, mainly because it's colorful and she likes all those things. And so they asked Leonardo, and Leonardo, do you want to be Ukrainian? Do you want to be Sri Lankan? Do you want to be Russian? And he said, no, I'm Canadian. And I love that about him. He's very, and even when we took a recent trip to Sri Lanka with my parents, and he wanted to bring his Blue Jay cap because he's like, I want them to see the maple leaf.
Oh, cool.
So I think he very much would resonate with your statement as well. But how do you, coming as an immigrant, now you have your son who's second generation, what are, and your father imparted so many important values into you. Right or wrong, it's your opinion, and of course how you're raising your son. But I'm curious, as there might be some immigrants thinking about, what does it mean once we come to Canada in terms of the next generation and our children?
Yeah, I mean, look, raising a child it's an arduous task, and especially when they go through teenage years and rebel against you, and you'll see that at some point. But all you hope is you're giving them some values that ground them, right? And like my son, he's 100% Tamil, right? And mother is a Tamil, I am a Tamil. Whether he feels he's Tamil or not, I'm not sure. But I would say that the thing that I'm trying to do with him is, and I think it's probably a good exercise for people to sort of do, especially if you're immigrant or I would say person of color, right? And this notion that somehow there's some nameless, faceless person out there going to keep them down in life. There's this narrative that's out there that talks about your person of color, you're going to be subjected to this and that, and to me, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this too, this thing is so overblown. And look, when you're a minority anywhere in the world, you're going to run into not so nice people from time to time. I have done it. I've seen it. You've seen it. But fundamentally, it doesn't change your ability to contribute to yourself and to society and to progress in life. If you keep telling your kid there's some person who's going to keep them down in life, no matter what they do, why would they even try? It's a poisonous chalice. It's the one thing I tell my son, Aaron, just put your head down, find your passion, and double down on it. And I'm not even a fan of, some people say work on your weaknesses. Why would you do that? Work on your strength and amplify that 10 times more. And for the weakness, that's where you have a team. Your weakness is their strength. And all my life I did that. So I'm not good at certain things. I know I'm not good at that. I hire people who are good at that. So that's what makes a team. So that's one thing I teach them. The second thing is humans should be every human should be guaranteed only two things: freedom and choice. End of story. So this country has given me that opportunity of freedom. I can leave here outside this building after the podcast and not worry about the fact I look the way I look. Right? In Sri Lanka, that would be an issue for me. And then choice. I can choose what I want to do in life. So once you have that, you will be rewarded by society for the right choices you make. And you'll be punished or not rewarded for the bad choices you make. And that's the price of freedom. So those are the two things I teach my son. Look, don't ever let anybody tell you you're last because of you look the way you look. You just go out and get it. And this is a free market society. If you are providing a service that's the best in the business, the market will pay the highest price for it. It doesn't matter who the person is behind the idea. Second is, you are responsible for your actions. You'll be punished for the bad choices, and you'll be rewarded for the good choices. And it's the same at home, right? And so, beyond that, I don't know how to raise a child.
I think that's great advice, and I'm definitely going to take some of that advice. Prisoner
now they're going to hate me more.
The kids. The kids?
Who is this guy?
Prisoner number 1056. This is such an incredible story. You didn't have to share this story, but you chose to.
Right.
And there are many ways you could have shared it. What inspired you to take this step? This is unbelievably, emotional experiences that you've gone through. And again, you didn't have to share it, but you chose to.
Right.
Why did you?
Look, it took a lot to go public with the story. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One, I thought it was therapeutic for me to write about it. Two, just to give my view on what I saw and how I overcame my struggles. And the first half of my life, so I've been here for 35 years, maybe the first 10 years of my life, I did everything wrong. right? And the outcome was bad because the input was terrible, right? And again, I was still totally believe that I am in charge of my own actions. And I thought maybe I should change the input and see what the outcome is. The Einstein's, I think he said it, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity.
Right.
Right. And I was doing the insanity thing, doing the same thing and having terrible outcome and blaming everybody else for the outcome. Society, my friend, whomever is around me is at fault, not me. Then I thought, hey, listen, I need to probably, I call this in the book, going to war with the man in the mirror. At the end of the day, that's it, right? Do you like the person you see in the mornings? Some days not, some days yes. And I have to figure out a way to go to war with the man in the mirror. Because the human spirit, to me, can endure a lot. It can. It's very resilient. It can be broken, but not easily. I have reflected deeply on that growing up during the Sri Lankan Civil War and witnessing the loss of many innocent lives. And so at a very young age, it taught me in the most profound way the fragile nature of life and life in itself. And as I said, I believe the power of one's actions and living to the fullest potential is the important thing. Because at the end of the day, nobody remembers you when you're gone. By the third generation, they won't remember who you are. So I wanted to document this story, not just for me, and I call it the collective Tamil experience, but also collective human experience. You don't have to be a Tamil to read this book, because anyone can connect to this story. Awful things happen to people. And my message is that circumstances will make you a victim in life sometimes, but your choices will make you remain as one. So the question for me was, do I want to remain as a victim, or do I want to overcome that and become a victor? And so I did it my way. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but I want to share that story. And it's not just my story. It's a story of many. In fact, I get emails from people who are not even Tamil saying, I read it and I had this happen to me, but a completely different context, but it's the same struggle. And so as I said earlier, like you don't, take accolades with you, leave an impact behind. So these experiences have taught me a more conscious approach to life and a desire to share that story widely with everyone. And that's why I wrote the book.
I was at the book launch, and so thank you for inviting me for that. I think that was an incredible experience. But to your point, and I was also in Malaysia with you when you spoke to predominantly Tamil audience. Yeah. And the reactions, whether it was the Tamil audience or at the book launch, a diverse group of people, was incredible. And I can tell you, my wife Dasha, her family lives in the Ukraine. She's read your book.
Okay.
And really, in some ways, it was shocking and very emotional for her thinking about what Ukraine is going through right now. But also very eye-opening in terms of understanding my father's journey and a lot of the Tamil community, Tamil community's journey. So I think, thank you for writing the book is what I'm trying to say. And I echo your statements of, this is a lot of people's story, not only in Canada, but around the world that have gone through similar struggles.
Yeah, no, I just a quick note. I got a note from somebody else not too long ago, a gentleman from an indigenous community who happened to read the book and connected with the story because he has similar challenges he had when he was growing up as a child, and now he's a successful businessman. And so what I'm saying is, it is a Tamil story, but it can resonate like your wife from Ukraine or anyone who lived through a conflict or seen conflict, or even here in Canada had conflicts.
You climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, Roy, and I think that's incredible. I hope I get to do that one day. Yeah. But it was really also to raise awareness for mental health. Speaking of people that are coming to Canada in these kind of very traumatic circumstances, what is your advice for people coming to Canada in those kinds of circumstances? How can they seek help? How can they address some of perhaps the mental pressures that they're going through?
Right. PTSD is real. I didn't know this until I got to be like in my mid 30s, and so I had to go seek help, professional help, and I talk about it in the book. And I think people who come from traumatic backgrounds, go through life, and it's no different than when people came back from World War II. They had PTSD, and no one ever dealt with it. And so, for me, it's very close to home. The cause behind supporting anyone with mental health issues. I think we all suffer from mental health issue in various degrees of it. Some are more severe than the other. Personally, my mother she suffered immensely due to mental illness. And I think partly because of the war trauma, but other part is probably the family had that gene where she had horrible affliction. And so I wanted to climb Kilimanjaro. I mean, I did it for my 50th birthday, and maybe I should do a better birthday party for me than suffering through the climb. But it was good. It was first of all, it was a personal challenge, and second, it was for a good cause. And I sort of carried symbolically my mom's picture in my bag the entire time, and then once I submitted, I stapled her picture right on to that summit. It's because the symbolic notion of like you have to help these people to climb their own mountains, and that's why I did it. And I see this all the time is that mental illness is a taboo in any culture, especially in our culture. I can only speak for our culture here, Tamils. And if you said you had cancer, you'll get sympathy immediately. But mental illness is something that people don't really sympathize with them. And Toronto is full of that. When you walk through the streets, you see them.
Yes.
So that's why I said, and so I think that, we should really help the newcomers, especially from countries where they're coming from, conflict zones. And it'd actually be better for the society to have well-adjusted people walking around than people with terrible mental afflictions.
You kind of hinted at some challenges that Canada is going through currently, and perhaps, I'm paraphrasing here, but a lack of vision, lack of unity. What is your vision of Canada moving forward? What are you hopeful about? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so if you look at Canada as a country, it's got all the bones for it, right? It's a beautiful home and a beautiful boulevard with bad plumbing. So you don't look at it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, and I just came up with that.
Should we trademark that too?
and the thing is, it's fundamentally there's something broken, and it's fixable. I think we need to have right policies. So for an example, if you look at Toronto Stock Exchange is a representative of the economy as a whole, right? So Toronto Exchange is heavy financial sector, heavy resource sector. That's Canada. Those are the both ends. There's no healthcare. There's no technology. All that money goes to the U.S. or other parts of the world. So we are attracting people, which is important, but are we attracting the right type of people? Again, I'm not against getting people who are suffering through a war, like Ukraine, for an example. You're going to get people like me who are coming to this country, very young age, with trauma, and hopefully they'll contribute. I certainly try to do my best. But generally speaking, the immigration policy needs to focus on skilled laborers and people who are willing to bring the capital here. Capital goes where capital is treated with respect, right? And I think we have a country where risk-taking is not rewarded well, and the money doesn't come here. So all the innovation that Canada could have goes somewhere else. So we are becoming a hub for those countries where we are supplying services, but the value add is happening somewhere else.
Right. I think a great example of that, Roy, is to your point, is AI.
Right.
U of T came up with the advancements in AI, and the U.S. is benefiting from that in terms of the implementation.
Right.
Both of us are connected with a lot of business folks, and some of whom I was at a dinner, and they're talking about leaving Canada.
Right.
Do you see any like key policies that you would identify as these are the things Canada needs to focus on to get us back into? Oh, sorry. Do you think that there are key policies that we can focus on that can get Canada back into that leadership position, attracting business, attracting this wonderful talent?
Yeah, look, I'm not a policy wonk, but just my layman's view of things of this complex issue is that we're always competing with, unfortunately, with a very powerful neighbor, right? And U.S. is the best thing ever happened to Canada, probably also the bad thing ever happened to Canada. We are safe because of the United States. We are also suffering sometimes because of the United States. Because how many people like even in our own community, are living in the Silicon Valley right now?
Yes.
Like I can give you 10 names right now. These are people who are from Waterloo University, Queen's University, some of the top universities in Canada. They go down south to work and to build and to flourish. And I see that every day. And so venture capitalism isn't a thing here in Canada. I know there are venture capitalists here, but not as big as what you see in the U.S. I think the one policy recommendation I would probably say is really just looking at our tax system. It's a regressive system for anyone who's willing to take risk. And I'm not saying just give it away, but I think it has to be fair. It has to be progressive, not regressive. So I think we need to look at that. And I'm an investor. You're an investor. You take a lot of risk when you put your own money down. But the upshot is it's punished at the same time. Like I want to contribute to society with tax dollars because you don't get to have all these nice things by not paying taxes. But there is a limit to what one needs to contribute. And so when you are punishing people for taking risk, then there's appetite is not there anymore. So I think it's not a simple fix, obviously, because it affects the treasury of the country. But the longer term, I think it can add more to the treasury because it would attract more dollars, more activities, more investments, and so on and so forth. So anything we need to diversify in this country is our economy more than the people. Because our economy is solely the 5 banks, the oligopoly.
Yes.
And then you got resource sector. That's pretty much it. There's nothing really in between for us to, and then the government employs a whole bunch of people. So I think in that sense, Canada is very exposed to global economic shocks and because of the lack of diversity.
Do you think the next 5 years are looking bright, going to be challenging? A lot of friends of mine are leaving Canada to, Dubai or the States.
Yeah.
What is your view?
I think it's going to be challenging. I think Canada needs to show the world they're open for business again. And, I think that I did the same event we were at, and I was shocked to hear that it isn't the destination of choice for many immigrants anymore, especially the skilled ones. So, and then the ones who came here are going back. I know a few young people who came from other parts of the world are going back to the country they're from, thinking that it's better for them to go back. And those are not good signs. And I would say, look, the momentum shifts and they can be persistent for a long time in a good way or bad way. And I think right now the shift is not so good for Canada. And I don't want to be the bearer of the bad news. And everybody knows this. Nobody wants to admit it. Yeah, I think we need to really, this political culture that we are living in. I don't think technology helped us because it put us all in this echo chambers. Everybody gets the feed. algorithm finds you for the certain things. And look, I'm guilty of that too. I'm seduced by my own opinions, and then if somebody's going to reaffirm that, I'm just going to go there, right? And I think it's important for us to, and I say this, and I should also follow my own advice: be educated, not validated.
Right.
And I think we are not getting educated on this. We're getting validated. So if you're feeling the certain way, and if you come and tell me that my feelings are validated by you, I'm going to say, yeah, he's a good guy. I'm going to vote for him.
Yes.
But I want you to come and say, hey, listen, I understand what you're saying, but as a person who's going to be enacting laws as part of the group parliamentarian, here is the reality, right? I think we are pandering to a segment of the population so that you get elected. And I understand the incentive to say that, but the funny thing is people say we want honest politicians, right? Well, this is maybe an oxymoron, but if you say honest politician and then they're honest and you don't like them anymore, right? And it's just like no different than growing up. I'm sure dad was tough on you sometime to give you an honest opinion. You didn't like it so much, but it's for the best. And I think what we are doing is kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
I worry about your children, my child, is because we are just borrowing and spending. Debt per household has gone up significantly, and it's only going to go up. Interest rates are high. We can't even pay our interest that we borrowed the money from. So people often run their household very conservatively when it comes to finance. But when it comes to public money, they're very... I don't want to use conservative. I'm not being political here. I'm just saying what maybe a better choice is that they're careful about how they run their personal finance. But when it comes to public money, very okay to spend it. Because, we learned this long time ago, and it's still true, is that you cannot spend your way out of trouble, right?
Right.
Only government can create inflation, nobody else, right? You print money, and you have less goods to chase, money chases that, and the price goes up. It's a simple economics. And as we learn today, as we're sitting in one of the highest inflationary times that I've experienced in this country, is that free money is expensive. That's what we learn. Like everything's gone up. And again, this is not a political thing. It affects everybody. It affects the person with the money. It affects the person without the money. Groceries are expensive. People are having a hard time trying to put food on the table. And this is not, again, I'm not trying to be any side of the political aisle here, but I think it's a reality and people have to wake up to this. So to answer your question, it's going to be a tough road ahead to get us out of this, but it can be done. This country has seen it before. It's not the first time we went through tough times. I think it's really coming to the realization that we do have a problem. You can't fix a problem unless you admit there's a problem.
Right.
And I think that admission isn't there in many parts of our country. And I think we can elect people who are responsible to actually tell the truth and say we are in trouble. And everybody has to tighten their belt, go through some tough times, and maybe we come out of this okay.
Right. Roy, I think inspirational leaders like yourself that are promoting things like diverse thought are the key to leading us through these tough times. So thank you very much for your time here on this podcast.
It's been a blast.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.